I could feel it, plain as day. Maya, the girl I'd known my whole life, was changing. She was my next-door neighbor, the younger of the two Fong sisters. Her sister, Chloe, was 3 years older. Maya and I were the same age. My parents and hers weren't just colleagues. They were best friends, neighbors for what felt like forever. It meant Chloe, Maya, and I were a package deal. We ate together, we walked to school together. My entire life, from my earliest memory, had them in it. Then Chloe left for college on the West Coast, and that hazy, half-formed crush I had on her dissolved into a quiet ache of missing her. It was just me and Maya then. We were freshmen in high school, that perfect, awkward age when crushes bloom like weeds. And mine was all for her. Maybe it was because we'd always been together. Maybe it was because she was beautiful, or maybe she just happened to fit the exact mold of what I thought a girl should be. Whatever it was, I only had eyes for her. From the first day of 9th grade, I wanted her to be my girlfriend. But Maya was a dreamer, equal parts romantic and pragmatic. She hinted that she felt the same way, but insisted we were too young to be official. I remember one sun-drenched afternoon, I drove her to the library in my beat-up old Civic. We found a table right under an air conditioning vent. The cool air drifted through her dark hair, and the quiet, studious look on her face made me lose my train of thought completely. Before I knew what I was doing, the words tumbled out, the secret hope I'd been hiding. Maya, I whispered, will you be my girlfriend? The second I said it, regret hit me like a ton of bricks. My eyes darted around, terrified someone had heard, but our corner was empty. I cautiously looked back at Maya. She was staring at me, her eyes wide with surprise. My heart was pounding so hard I couldn't get another word out. I just watched her, waiting for the verdict. We're still too young, she said. Her first words sent a chill straight through me. She's going to say no. A bitter taste filled my mouth, and I dropped my gaze, desperately trying to think of a way to play it off as a joke. But, she added, and I looked up. A playful smile was spreading across her face. After college acceptances come out, if you asked me to prom in front of the whole school, I might just say yes. Before I could process it, she stuck her tongue out, a mischievous glint in her eye. The sunlight pouring through the window caught the blush creeping up her neck and the tips of her ears. A wave of pure joy washed over me. I shot up from my chair, my body buzzing. If I hadn't clamped down on it, I would have shouted right there in the silent library. Deal, I grinned. I'll give you the biggest, most over-the-top promposal anyone's ever seen. We were 15 that year, at that perfect age when love feels like the only thing that matters. From that day on, Maya and I had this unspoken understanding. We walked to class together, we shared milkshakes, we did our homework side by side. We got closer and closer, and in my mind it was a sealed deal. Childhood sweethearts, first loves, we were going to walk hand in hand to the end of the line. But in the second half of our junior year, a crack appeared in our perfect little world. It came in the form of a sophomore, a kid named Ethan. He saw Maya once and was instantly hooked. But with me always there, he couldn't make a direct move. So he started engineering coincidences. He'd be there when we walked to school. He'd just happen to be lingering outside our classroom between periods. He'd run into us on the way home. These calculated encounters, peppered with small gifts and constant, flattering compliments, started to wear Maya down. She'd always been a sucker for grand romantic gestures. Why else would she want a public proposal? I'll admit I wasn't smooth. I couldn't flatter her the way Ethan did. I didn't have the nerve for that kind of relentless pursuit. But my biggest strength has always been knowing when to cut my losses. I knew Maya better than anyone. The moment I saw her start to waver, I began to pull back. I buried myself in my studies. If you feel small next to someone you like, don't shrink. Grow. That's what my dad always told me. Maybe he'd seen all along that Maya wasn't the type to settle down. Soon, she started accepting Ethan's invitations to join us for lunch. She'd still sit next to me, but her conversation, her laughter, it was all directed at him. Watching her light up while they talked, that fiery, animated version of herself, went from sharp pain in my chest to a dull, quiet ache, and finally, to a calm acceptance. It wasn't that I didn't say anything. I told her she was getting too close to him. She just brushed it off. He's just a friend, Leo. I'm not going to fall for someone else. Her words silenced me. If you're not going to fall for him, why does the way you look at him say something completely different? The ripples of hurt spread through me again, but this time they settled faster. If our story was going to be tainted, it was time to end it. What is it meant for you will never be yours. Letting go was the only way to start over. I cleared my mind of everything else and poured all my energy into studying for the SATs and getting my college applications ready. The conversations between me and Maya dwindled, and she didn't even seem to notice. We still shared a desk in AP history, but she spent every break running off to find Ethan, leaving me alone with my practice tests. Maya and Chloe were similar in one way. They were both naturally brilliant. We'd study together, do the same homework, but she'd always score 20 or 30 points higher than me on every test. If I wanted to get into UCLA, where Chloe was, I'd have to work twice as hard. Stacks of practice tests and dozens of empty pens were the witnesses to my effort. I was thinking about derivatives and essay prompts even while I ate dinner. Maya mentioned I was being obsessive once or twice, then gave up and went back to texting Ethan. At night, after dinner, I'd sit at my desk, grinding through problem sets. Sometimes, when I got tired, I'd lift my head and look out at the window across the way. Maya's room. She used to sit at her desk, facing me. Whenever I looked up, it was like she could feel it, and she'd look up too. She'd give me a sweet smile, or make a goofy face, and it would charge me up for another hour of studying. But now her window was empty. She was probably on her bed, phone in hand, texting him. Even though I decided to let go, a sour knot formed in my stomach. I shook my head, trying to clear it. Think about mom and dad. Think about how hard they work. No matter how exhausted they were from their jobs, they always came home, made dinner, and had a hot meal waiting for me. Whenever I tried to help with the dishes, Mom would gently push me back toward my room. "Your job is to study," she'd say. "Don't waste a single minute." To give me an extra edge, my dad spent a fortune on an online SAT tutor, specifically to help with my weaker sections. I overheard them talking about it one night when I went to the bathroom. It was only a 2-week intensive course, but it cost him 2 months' salary. All just to nudge my score a little higher. I went back to my desk, my resolve hardening. From that day on, I never once glanced at the window across from mine. With graduation approaching, Maya complained from the passenger seat of my car that I'd been acting weird. "Finals are coming up," I said flatly. "I don't have time to think about anything else." She scoffed. "Don't tell me you're still trying to get into UCLA. My sister is way smarter than me, and even she barely scraped by. You should give up on that. We should just aim for the state university." I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. I saw it clear as day, a flicker of contempt. She might not look down on me in other ways, but in that moment, she absolutely did. "It was just a goal," I replied calmly, refusing to get into it with her. My practice scores were still about 150 points short of the average for UCLA. She wasn't wrong that it was a long shot. She must have realized she'd said the wrong thing, because she started to stammer out an explanation just as Ethan pulled up beside us on his flashy new bike. Her attention snapped to him instantly. The rest of the way to school, she was laughing and joking with him, leaning out my window to talk. I just kept my eyes on the road, my hands tight on the steering wheel. She was sitting in my car, laughing with another guy. At one point, he even asked her to hop on the back of his bike, and for a split second, I saw her hesitate before she finally said no. The last week of school, Ethan came to find her. "Maya," he said, calling her by a nickname she once told me was reserved only for me and her family, "since you're graduating and going off to college. Can I at least give you a ride to school for this last week?" She didn't even seem to register the nickname. She just glanced at me, a conflicted look on her face, as if she was in a terrible bind. "It's fine," I said, my voice breezy as I pulled out a textbook. "Go with him. It'll save me some gas, and I can get to the library earlier." After a moment's hesitation, she agreed. For that entire week, she rode to and for school with him. I started leaving a few minutes earlier each morning, deliberately avoiding them. The first day, Maya stormed into homeroom and glared at me, but I just gave her a brief glance before burying my nose in my work. We barely spoke that week. Even at lunch, she sat with Ethan's friends, not with me. My own friends kept asking what was going on. I just told them Maya and I were only neighbors and left it at that. With no distractions, I focused completely on my finals. Finally, graduation day arrived. As my parents checked and rechecked my cap and gown, my heart swelled with gratitude for them. "I can do this," I told myself, and walked into the ceremony. After it was all over, my parents didn't ask if the finals were hard or if I was nervous about my results. They just pulled me into a huge hug and started talking about where we should go for a celebratory trip. I just smiled and said I wanted to sleep for a week straight. Dad clapped me on the shoulder, and Mom hurried me into the car. Back home, I slept until I woke up naturally, feeling like a new person. A year's worth of tension melted away. I stretched out lazily, not wanting to get out of bed, even though I wasn't sleepy anymore. I finally dragged myself out of my room around noon when I heard voices in the living room. Maya's parents were over, planning a joint family vacation with mine. They were thrilled to see me and asked why I hadn't been over to hang out with Maya. I just smiled and said studying had been more important, but now that I was free, I'd have plenty of time. Mrs. Fong's eyes crinkled into crescents as she pulled me down to sit beside her. "Where do you want to go, Leo?" I thought for a moment. "Maybe a road trip?" See some of the national parks like Zion. Her smile widened. She exchanged a look with her husband. That's exactly what Maya said, and just like that, it was decided. Both families would go on a week-long road trip to Utah. Chloe was flying home in a couple of days, so she could join us. It had been a long time since we'd all done something together. 2 days later, Chloe was back, as gentle and warm as ever. The first thing she did was hand me a small box. Inside was the limited edition anime figure I'd been dying to get. Overcome with surprise and joy, I wrapped my arms around her in a quick hug before realizing what I was doing and letting go. When I did, I saw Maya staring at us, her expression sour. "It's okay, Leo," Chloe said with a soft smile. "It's not like you didn't hug me all the time when we were kids." Her words made me blush. Looking at her fair, pretty face, I felt a little jolt in my chest. We set off on the trip in 2 cars. In the old days, Maya would have immediately jumped in with me. This time, she stayed in her family's car. "It's just the 3 of us in here," my mom called out jokingly. "Anyone want to come liven things up?" To my surprise, Chloe started walking toward our car. At the same time, Maya's door flew open and she scrambled out, rushing to get to our car first. So I ended up sandwiched between the 2 sisters in the back seat. But the atmosphere was anything but harmonious. I found myself unconsciously leaning toward Chloe, asking her about college life. She answered everything with her usual grace, sharing funny stories and interesting details. We talked and laughed easily, without a hint of awkwardness, which only seemed to make Maya more and more irritated. But nobody paid her any attention. I was lost in my conversation with Chloe, the big sister who had always looked out for me. She was exactly as I remembered, not a bit distant despite the months she'd been away. The trip was a blast for everyone. Everyone except Maya, who seemed to be in a perpetual bad mood. Her mom scolded her a few times over the week, but it didn't change anything. The only time she smiled was when her phone buzzed, and then she'd be lost to the screen for hours. Chloe watched her for a long time one afternoon, a thoughtful expression on her face, before her gaze drifted over to me. But I was too busy taking in the breathtaking canyon views to notice. The week-long trip flew by. On the drive home, I was grinning like an idiot at a picture on my phone. It was of me and Chloe on a boat ride. I was pointing excitedly at something in the distance, and she was looking at me with a soft, gentle smile, an indulgent look that I could get lost in. We looked so comfortable together, so close. The more I looked at it, the more I liked it. There were plenty of photos from the trip, me with my parents, with the fangs, and a few more with Chloe. But there was only one with Maya, a candid shot her mom had taken. In it, she looked distant, her attention clearly on her phone. I was turned toward Chloe. We were only a foot apart, but it felt like we were separated by an ocean. When Maya saw that photo, she froze. A guilty look crossed her face, but I was already scrolling to the next picture, pretending not to care. From that day on, Maya started coming over all the time, either just to hang out or to invite me over for dinner. I didn't turn her down, but I kept a careful, polite distance. I'd go over when invited, and I wouldn't kick her out when she came to my house, but the easy intimacy we once had was gone. We were just friends now. Ordinary friends. Her mood soured, but she tried to act cheerful around me. This went on for a few days. The day we had to go to school to finalize our college choices, she was waiting for me at my front door, looking conflicted. "Let's go," I said, ignoring her complicated expression as I wheeled my bike out of the garage and patted the rear seat. "Leo," she said suddenly on the way, her arms wrapping tightly around my waist. Her voice was tinged with a strange vulnerability. "Are you still going to keep your promise?" She was holding on so tight, it was hard to steer. I told her to loosen up, but she wouldn't, so I had to pull over to the side of the road. "We made a deal," she said, her eyes looking a little red. The wind whipped her hair around her face, giving her a kind of fragile beauty. "You can't go back on your word." I looked at this girl I'd grown up with, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a surge of impulse. I wanted to be reckless just one more time. I didn't want to lose her. She'd been my entire world for so long. "Okay," I said quietly, my internal debate ending as I saw the pleading look at her eyes. I decided to give her one last chance. If she said yes to being my girlfriend and promised to keep her distance from other guys, I would give it another shot. When we got to the classroom, my guidance counselor was ecstatic to see me, pulling me aside to talk animatedly. Just then, Maya's phone rang. Since it was after graduation, nobody cared. She glanced at the screen, then mumbled something about needing the restroom and rushed out. My counselor was gushing about my final SAT scores, announcing them to the whole class. Everyone turned to look at me, their eyes wide with shock. My final score was a full 150 points higher than my best practice test. Getting into UCLA was now a sure thing. I filled out my decision form, but Maya still hadn't come back. I pulled out my phone and called her. It rang several times before she picked up. It was noisy on her end. She said she was on the athletic field and would be right back, then hung up, with nothing else to do. I took her form and went to find her. As I approached the field, I saw a crowd gathered in the center. And there, in the middle of it all, was Maya. Ethan was in front of her, holding a huge bouquet of roses and saying something to her. It was obviously a proposal. Maya was biting her lip, looking torn. She hadn't said yes or no. After a moment's thought, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the gift I'd been saving. It was a delicate silver necklace. It wasn't expensive, but I knew she loved it. She'd pointed it out once when we were at the mall, signed that her allowance wasn't enough. Back then, when she was my whole world, I'd file that information away. Time to keep my promise. Now it was up to her. Maya, I said, walking straight into the circle. I opened a small box and held it out to her. I like you. Will you be my girlfriend? I acted as if Ethan and his grand gesture didn't even exist. Ethan's face darkened. We saw the flicker of delight in Maya's eyes. He panicked and whispered something to her. I couldn't hear what he said, but Maya's expression changed instantly. Her gaze darted to another girl standing nearby, and then she reached out and took the flowers from Ethan. She didn't say a word, but the message was crystal clear. I let out a short, self-deprecating laugh. Well, Maya, I kept my promise. I tossed the necklace box onto the grass, shoved her form into her hand, and turned and walked away without looking back. I could feel the eyes of the other students on me. Pity, scorn, amusement. I felt nothing. I was a guy who kept his word. She had just thrown away her last chance. From now on, we were just neighbors. For someone like me, who needed things to be clean and uncomplicated, I'd already bent my own rules for her. This just used up the last of my patience. She didn't follow me. I didn't go back to the classroom. Everything was done anyway. I just got on my bike and rode home. Leo, why did some other boy drop Maya off? My mom asked, clearly annoyed that I hadn't brought her home. Were you being moody again? I explained that she had something to do and was coming home later. My mom looked at me thoughtfully, then sighed and walked away. A little while later, Maya appeared in my doorway, looking at me with timid, careful eyes. Leo, Ethan's sister, was there, she started, her voice soft. I was afraid he'd be embarrassed. That's the only reason I did it. Please don't be mad. I almost laughed at the excuse. I turned and studied her. She couldn't meet my gaze. Then she moved closer, grabbing my arm and starting to whine playfully. Oh, come on, Leo. I know I messed up. It was just this once. I promise it'll never happen again. Okay? Just ask me again. I'll say yes this time. I swear. Her sweet, pleading voice just made my skin crawl. The thought that she probably used that same tone with Ethan made my stomach turn. My expression must have been colder than I realized, because she stopped, looking at me with disbelief. Just then, my mom came back into the room and, seeing her, excitedly invited her to stay for dinner. Mom, I cut in before Maya could accept. She has plans later. She can't stay. My words made her face fall, but in front of my mom, all she could do was force a smile and head home. My phone immediately started blowing up with texts from her. Long, rambling paragraphs explaining the situation, talking about our lifelong friendship, how she couldn't bear to see Ethan humiliated. I didn't have the energy to read them. I replied with a single sentence. Did you ever stop to think that I might be humiliated too? Then I put my phone down. I didn't read another message she sent. The next day, my friends and I got summer jobs at a mall a few towns over. My shifts were erratic, a mix of mornings and afternoons. Maya came by a few times, but I was always working. We didn't see each other once the entire summer. I didn't answer her calls, and I didn't reply to her texts. The first time I saw her again was when I got my first real paycheck and took Chloe out to celebrate. Maya tagged along, looking a little flustered and excited. She kept trying to start conversations with me, and I'd respond politely but briefly. Her phone kept buzzing in her pocket, but she ignored it every time. With Chloe there, she couldn't bring up what happened, but she kept shooting me guilty looks. Chloe, for her part, acted as if she didn't notice a thing. She just watched the traffic, reminding us to be careful. Then Maya's phone rang. She rejected the call twice. The third time, she glanced at me, and seeing I wasn't paying attention, she answered it, her voice a hushed, annoyed whisper. I don't know what was said, but her face paled. She hung up, looking conflicted, and then flagged down a cab. A friend of mine just got into town, she said hurriedly. I have to go meet them. She rushed off, leaving me and Chloe standing on the sidewalk. Chloe didn't seem to mind her sister's abrupt departure at all. In fact, she smiled and took my hand. There's too much traffic here, she said calmly. I'll feel better if I'm holding on. It felt like we were kids again, back when a taller, more developed Chloe would hold my hand on the way home from elementary school. Back then, it just felt safe. Now, it sent a jolt through me. Her hand was so soft in mine, and the easy intimacy felt completely different from anything I'd ever had with Maya. I made reservations at a nice restaurant near the mall and ordered all of Chloe's favorite dishes. After the meal, I proudly paid the bill. "This place is too expensive," Chloe said, frowning at the receipt as if I'd committed a crime. "Next time, just tell me what you want to eat, and I'll make it for you at home." "It's okay," I said, grinning. "The whole reason I got a job was so I could treat you to a proper meal." This felt different, significant. It was the first time I'd ever used my own money to treat Chloe. We wandered through the mall afterward, and Chloe stopped at one of the watch counters. After looking for a while, she picked one out and bought it. I glanced at the price tag and nearly choked. It was over $1,000. "This is an investment," she said with a playful huff, rolling her eyes in a way that was surprisingly charming. "It'll last for years. Unlike your dinner, which is already gone." I must have been staring, because a faint blush rose on her cheeks. She quickly looked down, fastened the watch on my wrist, and paid for it without another word. On our way out, we saw Maya. She was holding hands with Ethan, and they were talking to another girl who I recognized immediately as Ethan's older sister. Chloe looked at them, then turned and looked at me. I felt nothing, but Chloe's brow furrowed. "Maya," she called out, walking straight toward them. Maya's face went white when she saw us. She instantly dropped Ethan's hand and hurried over, as if terrified we'd talk to them. Ethan, whose arm was in a sling, scowled at us. "My friend left, so I was coming to find you guys and just ran into them," Maya explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. She tried to grab our arms to lead us away. I instinctively pulled my arm back. Maya froze, a wounded look on her face. Ethan's sister came over and said a polite hello before quickly pulling her brother away. Maya still wanted to hang out, but Chloe and I both said we were tired, so she had no choice but to head home with us. As we were parting ways, she made a gesture toward her phone, telling me to check my messages. I ignored her. A few days before we were all due to leave for college, I knocked on the Fang's door with my suitcase in hand. You guys," Maya stammered, looking completely bewildered as she saw me and Chloe standing there with our luggage. I just smiled at her and held up my acceptance letter from UCLA. "Time to head to campus. Chloe and I are on the same flight." Her expression shifted from shock to devastation. Finally, tears welled up in her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. "Leo, you promised we'd go to the same college." "Sorry, I never said that. That day, I said if you asked me in front of the whole school, I'd say yes, and then we'd go to college together. Did you forget? First, I said, holding up a finger, you turn me down. And second, I said we'd go to college together, not to the same college." Since she was the one who brought up our old deal, unafraid of her parents hearing, I had no problem being direct. Luckily, Mr. and Mrs. Fong weren't around to overhear. "No, Leo, you can't do this," she cried. "If you leave, what am I supposed to do? Are we going to be long distance for 4 years?" For the first time, I was genuinely baffled by her logic. "You rejected me. What long distance are you talking about? You turned me down," I said flatly. "There's nothing to be long distance about." I grabbed my suitcase and Chloe's, ready to leave, but Maya grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. "You're joking, right? You're just taking your sister to the airport. There's no way your scores were high enough for UCLA." She seemed to be clinging to this last shred of hope, searching my face for any sign that this was all a prank. Just then, my dad pulled up in the car and honked, telling us to hurry. "I've never lied to you, Maya." With that, I pulled my arm free and walked out the door. I didn't look back at Maya, not even once. Chloe gently patted her sister's shoulder, sighed, and got into my dad's car with me. Maya just stood there on the porch, stunned, watching until our car disappeared down the street. It was the peak of move-in season, so traffic was terrible. My phone started buzzing relentlessly. I didn't have to look to know it was Maya. She'd been so distracted before finals that, despite her good grades, her dream of UCLA had slipped away. She'd ended up committing to the local state university. For years apart, maybe it would give her time to figure things out. I, on the other hand, was buzzing with excitement. Not even gridlock could dampen my mood. My dad dropped me and Chloe off at the airport, telling me to study hard and to look after Chloe. I promised I would, then gave him a tight hug, noticing for the first time how much his shoulders stooped. "Don't worry, Dad," I said. "I'm grown up now. I can take care of myself. You and Mom just take care of each other at home." As the plane taxied down the runway, I saw him waving from the observation deck, a lump forming in my throat. After a long flight, Chloe and I finally stepped onto the UCLA campus. She knew her way around and helped me get registered and find my dorm. She even made my bed for me. My new roommates looked on with a mixture of envy and admiration, giving me a thumbs up and whispering about how my girlfriend was both gorgeous and caring. I didn't correct them. A strange thrill went through me. Afterward, I walked Chloe back to her dorm, carrying her heavy suitcase all the way up to the 5th floor. She pulled out a tissue and gently wiped the sweat from my forehead, her brow furrowed with concern. Just then, her roommates arrived and stared at our easy intimacy. They pulled Chloe aside, grilling her about who I was. I don't know what she told them, but they kept shooting curious glances my way. As Chloe started unpacking, her other 2 roommates showed up. The 3 of them immediately ganged up on her, laughingly demanding she treat them to a welcome-back dinner. Without a second thought, Chloe agreed. And that's how I, completely by accident, ended up having dinner with 4 girls from the senior dorm. From then on, Chloe and I fell into a routine. We ate together in the dining hall and took walks around campus in the evenings. The rumor that we were a couple spread like wildfire. I found out when a friend of mine saw us walking and started teasing me. I was about to explain, but Chloe just slipped her arm through mine. That settled that. My friends chuckled, gave me a knowing look, and made themselves scarce. Chloe's face was a little flushed. She explained that a few guys had been relentlessly hitting on her, and it was getting annoying. She was just using me as a shield to get some peace. Well, if that's the case, I'll never be able to find a girlfriend, I joked. Maybe you should just be my girlfriend for real, Chloe. She stopped and stared at me for a long moment. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said, okay. Was she serious? I stopped walking, looking at her in disbelief. Don't forget, she said, her voice gaining strength as she met my eyes. Her gentle gaze was filled with a surprising firmness. I grew up with you, too. We're childhood friends, aren't we? Why can't I be the one who likes you? I just can't believe it, I stammered. You're so beautiful, Chloe, and you're so smart. Why would you like me? Chloe was, objectively, prettier than her sister. She was also kind and even-tempered, never once throwing a tantrum. Growing up, she was always the one giving in to me and Maya. Leo is great too, she said, rushing to my defense. You're tall and handsome, and you got into UCLA, same as me. Your grades are just as good as mine. I was touched. I pulled her into a hug, an action that felt completely natural after a lifetime of doing it. Thank you for liking me, Chloe. And just like that, with no grand confession, just a few simple words, Chloe and I were officially together. We just hadn't told our families yet. A couple of months later, Chloe started an internship. To stay close to me, she had a friend pull some strings to get her a position at a company not far from campus. At first, she commuted from her dorm, but the late hours and frequent overtime made it difficult. She decided it would be easier to rent an apartment nearby. I was all for it. An apartment of her own meant more privacy for us. Then, biting her lip, she asked if I wanted to move in with her. Move in together. The thought sent my mind reeling. Fantasies of cooking dinner and waking up next to Chloe flooded my brain. I agreed so fast and so enthusiastically that she burst out laughing at my goofy expression. After looking at several places, we found a small but perfect one-bedroom apartment. We filled it with things we both liked, little decorations and cozy furniture, until it felt like home. Looking around our new place, I still felt like I was dreaming. Was I really living with Chloe? The reality of it didn't hit me until she came out of the bathroom after a shower, her face flushed, and shyly told me it was my turn. I snapped out of my daze and practically sprinted to the bathroom. From that day on, we were like a married couple. She tried to get home early to cook for me, and I'd surprise her with little gifts. Because we'd known each other our whole lives, there were no arguments, just an unexpected and perfect harmony. Sometimes I'd get home first and cook all her favorite dishes, setting the table with a bouquet of flowers. Other times she'd come home with a new jersey for my favorite team or another rare anime figure for my collection. Happiness made time fly. Before we knew it, it was time for winter break. After one last dinner in our apartment, we carefully shut the windows, turned off the water, and unplugged everything. We took one last, lingering look around the little home we'd made, then walked out the door, arm in arm. We were happy, but sad to leave the life we'd built, even if it was just for a month. On the flight home, I held her close, feeling like we could talk forever. My parents texted again and again, asking when we'd land. I patiently replied each time. Just before we touched down, I told Chloe it was time to tell our parents about us. For the first time, she hesitated. What about Maya? She asked. What about her? I said, there's nothing between us. It doesn't matter what she thinks. Chloe finally nodded, but she made me promise to let her be the one to announce it. When we walked out of the terminal, both sets of parents were there waiting for us. Maya had classes until the afternoon, so she hadn't come. We all piled into my parents' car, with my mom and me in the back. She held my hand, looking me over. You've gotten thinner and darker after just one semester, she fretted. I laughed and flexed my arm. It's not thinner, Mom, it's leaner. They worked us hard during orientation. My parents both chuckled. We drove straight to Maya's university to pick her up. She was just walking out as we arrived, and her face lit up when she saw us. Over the past few months, I had never once contacted her, but she texted and called me constantly. I had told her once, plainly, that we could only ever be friends, but she didn't listen. After that, I only replied selectively, ignoring any message that was even remotely flirty. At the restaurant, Chloe and I sat together. Maya tried to squeeze in next to me, but as she sat down, she saw our hands clasped together under the table. The color drained from her face. During dinner, Mrs. Fong brought up the fact that Chloe was graduating soon and that it was time for her to find a nice boyfriend. Chloe stood up, pulled me to my feet, and held up our joined hands for her parents to see. "Leo and I are together," she said. The simple statement hung in the air, leaving both sets of parents stunned. Then, a moment later, the room erupted in laughter. My dad and Mr. Fong raised their glasses simultaneously. "Looks like we're going to be family." Mr. Fong beamed. "I watched Leo grow up. I couldn't ask for a better son-in-law. And Chloe is a wonderful girl," my dad shot back. "So gentle and kind. I'd be thrilled to have her as a daughter-in-law." The two of them launched into a round of mutual compliments, drinking happily and talking excitedly about the future, about us getting engaged, about wedding plans, about how many kids we should have. "The wedding gift from our family will be $30,000, my dad said firmly. "Chloe is a treasure. We won't shortchange her. I'll handle the engagement party," Mr. Fong declared. "You won't have to spend a dime. These are my only 2 daughters. Everything I have will be theirs one day." Our mothers were grinning from ear to ear, whispering to each other and stealing glances at me and Chloe. "I only have one condition," Mr. Fong announced, his voice booming. He had a better-paying job than my dad, and his confidence showed. "When you have a son, one of them has to take my family name, and I'll throw in a house and a car as a wedding present." "What are you talking about?" My dad slurred, already a little drunk. "Of course the first boy can have your name. We're family. Don't be a stranger." We all laughed so hard we could barely stay in our seats. Through it all, Maya sat silent, her face as white as a sheet. She barely touched her food. Later that night, back at their house, she and Chloe had the first real fight of their lives. The shouting was so loud we could hear it next door. When I knocked and went inside, I found the usually gentle Chloe standing her ground like a mother hen, refusing to back down an inch. "Leo likes me," Maya screamed. "He asked me to be his girlfriend. How could you steal him from me? So what if he asked you?" Chloe retorted. "You didn't say yes. What's wrong with me being with him?" Hearing her daughters, Mrs. Fong looked at me with a complicated expression. I gave her an apologetic nod and walked over to Chloe, taking her hand in mine. "Maya, the only reason I asked you was because you told me to," I said, my voice calm. "I didn't even want to be with you at that point, because I knew you were going to choose Ethan. You rejected me. So what is all this about now?" My words deflated her instantly. I was just trying to." Seeing her stammer, trying to come up with another excuse, I decided to end it once and for all. "While I was being laughed at by half the school, you chose to stand there and let it happen. Did you ever think about how I felt? And now you're trying to tell me you and your sophomore were just friends. That day Chloe and I saw you with him. Was he forcing you to be there? Were you forced to meet his sister and pretend to be his girlfriend? Have you even broken up with him yet?" My rapid-fire questions left her pale and speechless. All she could do was whisper through her tears that she was only pretending to be his girlfriend, that they were never really together. "Whether you actually wanted to be his girlfriend or not, you know the truth," I said, my voice low. "We've known each other our whole lives, Maya. I know exactly how you think. Since you already had someone else in your heart, you should have just left me alone." She had nothing left to say. That night, Chloe came home with me. It was her official introduction to my parents as my girlfriend. For the rest of the break, she barely spoke to Maya. I spent all my time with her, not caring what Maya was doing. The day before we were scheduled to go back to school, Maya showed up at our door. Our families were throwing us an engagement party that night, and we were leaving for LA the day after. What could she possibly want? Puzzled, Chloe and I followed her outside. Waiting for us were Ethan and his sister. "He told me to just pretend to be his girlfriend," Maya said, her voice shaking. "He said you were watching and that he'd be really embarrassed if I said no, so I just went along with it." Ethan's sister looked shocked, glancing from her brother to Maya, clearly not expecting to be dragged into this. "Maya, we were together all the time," Ethan said, frowning. He looked at me with open hostility, as if I were the one who had stolen his girlfriend. "You agreed to be my girlfriend. Why are you backing out now?" "I didn't manage our friendship properly," Maya said quickly, her voice firm. "I'm sorry. I've always seen you as just a friend, nothing more." Her bluntness made both Ethan and his sister scowl. "Just a friend?" Ethan shot back. You texted me all day. You came to my classes to see me. When I got hurt, you drove 30 miles just to check on me and told my sister you felt bad for not taking better care of me as my girlfriend. Is that how you treat a friend? Maya's face grew even paler. She didn't know how to respond and just kept stealing worried glances at me. It was you. Ethan suddenly yelled, turning on me. You forced her to do this, didn't you? You were afraid I was going to take her from you. But we're the ones who are in love. You can't break us up. It has nothing to do with him. Maya cried out before I could say a word, spreading her arms to block me. It was my fault for not being clear. I'm sorry, but I think you're mistaken, I said calmly. I lifted my hand, intertwined with Chloe's. On our fingers, matching engagement rings sparkled in the sun. Chloe and I are getting engaged tonight. Whatever is going on with you two has nothing to do with me. Ethan fell silent. His sister grabbed his arm, stopping him from saying anything else. I don't care what you were thinking, his sister said, her voice sharp but reasonable. You led my brother on, and now you're trying to walk away from it. You owe us an apology. Maya had no defense. She just hung her head, mumbling apologies. His sister dragged a fuming Ethan away, clearly deciding that Maya was more trouble than she was worth. Later that night, Chloe told me that Ethan's sister had called Maya and read her the riot act for messing with her brother. The next day, our engagement party was a simple, happy affair with all our relatives gathered to celebrate with us. Afterward, Chloe pulled me aside, concerned. Maya wasn't doing well. She was walking around in a daze, completely out of it. Yesterday's confrontation had clearly hit her hard. Chloe and I went to find Ethan's sister. We explained the whole long, complicated history between me and Maya, and how Ethan had inserted himself into it. When his sister understood that her brother had knowingly pursued a girl who was already practically taken, she was mortified. I laid everything out, including my relationship with Chloe. She apologized sincerely, saying it was her brother's fault for breaking me and Maya up. I just shook my head with a small smile and walked away, holding Chloe's hand. I didn't realize Maya had been standing behind us the whole time. She was watching us, her expression a mixture of complexity and despair. Can we talk? She asked. I refused, gently but firmly. Maya, we grew up together. You know how I am. We can't go back. Besides, I added, squeezing Chloe's hand, I'm happy with your sister. I know, she whispered. That day, Maya followed us home in a fog. She didn't even come out to say goodbye when Chloe and I left for the airport. 3 years later, the day after my college graduation, Chloe and I got married. Maya was the maid of honor, and she gave us her heartfelt blessing. It was a beautiful wedding. As I watched Chloe, more stunning than I had ever seen her, walk down the aisle on her father's arm, I promised him I would make her happy for the rest of our lives. I slid the ring on her finger, pulled her close, and kissed her deeply. In the front row, Maya cried until her makeup ran, her mother trying in vain to comfort her. After the wedding, we moved into our new house. Maya, showing no interest in dating, bought the house right next door. When our son, Noah, was born, Maya was a constant presence, helping with the baby and the housework. It was a huge help, but we worried it was preventing her from living her own life. Chloe tried to talk to her about finding a boyfriend, about her future. She would just smile, shake her head, and continue bouncing Noah on her knee, a look of pure joy on her face. Our jobs were local, and while Maya's salary wasn't high, her hours were flexible. Having her around saved us so much time and stress that eventually we stopped trying to convince her otherwise. We were happy to have her. Noah, say mama. Mama. One Saturday night, Chloe and I came home from a much-needed date night. As we pushed open the front door, that was the conversation we heard. We froze in the doorway, staring as Maya beamed, hugging our son tightly. We looked at each other, utterly speechless.